here you can see that I will receive the string until just to get the username. So I get the username, I will assert that it is actually 12 bytes, which doesn't matter. So now I will send through, which is to get a token, which is what I said, you get a token. And then now, you see, I block out the ID, and then I block out the CT1, I block out the CT2, blah, blah, blah. Then I XOR your CT1 with the username, which is a guess, whatever number that is. And then you add the remaining 4 bytes. Why do you need the 4 now bytes? To make sure it is 1 block 16 bytes. So first of all, we will calculate something called phi n. This is called Euler's torsion function. This function basically means we are finding how many primes there are co-primes, how many numbers there are co-prime to n from 1 to n minus 1. Basically, right, the number now we put is n. And since n has only p and q, right, technically the two primes are just p minus 1 times q minus 1. This is a formula that is already made for quite a while. Alright, so you want to see what I mean by this. Let's say I say phi 7. What could be phi 7 is 6. How do I know it so fast? Because there's only 6 numbers that doesn't share their primes with 7, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 7 does so that you can maybe infer what is P and Q without me just telling you, hey, P and Q is just this number. You know, that's where typically CTF challenges will try to do. They will try to give you enough hints so that you can do some mathematical calculation to get whatever you need to solve this challenge, but they wouldn't, you know, baby feed you directly. So let's look at this. All right, so okay, so whoever can come up with the correct, all right. So for whoever's physically right, whoever wrote down, whoever can determine what is the solution, you can write the equation down. There's a marker pen here. Write it down. Maybe I'll link a challenge later. Here's the marker pen. Whoever thinks they have the solution for calculating out either a P or Q using the two special numbers that I provide, take this marker pen, write it on the whiteboard. If it's correct, I will leak one of the challenge out, half of it. All right. Any ideas, my dear bright mind? All right. Here's a great hint for you guys. Modulus, right? You can apply to equations just like how you can apply plus minus, you know, typical operators. Like let's say you have 3 plus, let's say you have x plus y equals z. You can just add. The commands are actually the same as the previous one, but in this case we only have to use the dump the SQLite file.
Bro, don't worry, I got it. Halfway.
Wow, someone is so good. Wow, nice one. New cheese and yolk cow. I wonder if that's all good. Yeah, I find it weird that you can solve the fourth challenge without solving the third. But yeah, they're unrelated, so that makes sense. So here we have the select particular. We started with finding out what browser is supposed to be. So you want to go about that and then you can really grab by this case, Chrome is not used by me, right? There's no Chrome data, and therefore Chrome is not used. So we can move on to the next browser, which is Firefox. And we find that there's a lot of Firefox data files, indicating that Firefox is installed anonymously, right? So you can search up like for its artifacts for Firefox. Well, you can start reading these articles and all that. Eventually, you will read something related to the cases.SQLite. And this file is storing all of the URLs that the user has access when the web computer is being done. So that's why I'm going directly to the SQLite cases for SQLite. And then once you have this particular hash, you can download it. Again, to access the SQLite, you can use an online browser, or if you have a service or other data on your system, you can use that as well.
So now I'm going to move on to the fourth challenge, password. Can you find the password of the card user? In this case, we already know that there are two users currently in public, so this is not really anything. So when it comes to passwords, there are two particular plugins that we use. One is hash down and one is FSeC down. These are related to how Windows store the passwords locally on the computer. It's actually quite hard to get this from the help page because it doesn't specify that it's a password, right? You need to really understand how Windows work before you know that. So I'm just going to tell you very quickly that the command to dump passwords is one, hash dump or FSeC dump. These two basically dump the password, right? And to use this is actually really simple and just need to type it in the command prompt because the output is going to be very straightforward. You'll get an output like this, where you have the user hashes as well as the username. So in this case, the user hash is definitely to be cracked because I intentionally make it so. You can go into tools like Crackstation. You can of course use John Ripper or you can use Hashcat to practice, but I prefer to use this faster. He is a robot. And then when you crack, you get this password, right? But as I said before, you cannot submit this as a flag because you can convert this into SHA-256. So I already have this here. I copy this, right? And then I copy this one, and I submit this in the platform. So as for the last challenge, I'm not going to go through how to solve it, it's up to you, but I believe I've taught enough for you to solve this out. So you basically look into the files, you can either dump the process or you can either dump the files to find out what sub.next is and how it ended up spawning a children. So that's basically for the forensics workshop. I will start answering questions now. Anyone have any questions?
Can we start from? Can we start from this time?
Oh my god. But I gave the
you want to come to Malaysia?
Yeah, so let's say you download this challenge file, right, is already 6 GB, 5 GB.
What's the second step? The second step. After the file scan, then you start the folder, fix it somewhere.
So to convert the file from documents, you need to build and move the first file, right, and then to another file. Basically, this is not changing the file. So you change the .NET file to a file that to an extension that maybe your browser can understand, right, as well like you. So this is the command to change the file. I will send it copy and paste this, right? I'm gonna put MOV for you. Original file, rename file, right? You have to change the parameters as well. And this feature right here, we're going to talk about it later, but basically LSB stands for least significant byte. I'll cover more about this later. And some of the another important thing you have to notice is that it is dynamically linked. Now, there are two ways that you can link a binary, which is, first one is called statically linked, and the second one is dynamic linking. So to understand this, you can think about it as, right, when you are writing source code, you will see that usually you will import some headers or library files, right? And inside these files, you can use different functions, like for example in C programming, you have like puts, printf, fgets, all of these functions. Now, these functions, you did not create it yourself, right? You are just using the function that someone else created for you. You didn't define what instructions that it will carry out. Someone else did it for you, and you just use it in your code. So, this is similar to, I'm going to talk about dynamic linking. So basically, it's something similar when you compile your binary. Then rather than having to run instruction from your executable, it's going to run it into a file called shared object. For Linux, it's called a shared object. Usually you can see the extension is a .so, or for Windows usually we call it a DLL, which is a dynamic link library, and this is for Windows 1. So if you can go here back to your Linux and you can check, right, use this command ldb and you put your file here, you can see that it's a dynamically linked library, and the library that is being used is over here, right here. You can see this libc.so.6. Now this is a shared object file. You can just go ahead and check the type. You can see here this is a shared object, which is different from what we are dealing with. So now, how this dynamic linking works? Let me draw this out for you. Okay. So let's say you have your program right here, and you have some functions, maybe print, and your main, all your functions. And let's say if you have multiple programs now running, this is kind of a bit redundant, right? Because these functions are being reused over and over again. So the purpose of this shared library is that you will have one more file, and this is our .so file. This is our shared object file. And rather than having all of this print function all inside it, what we can do is we can remove it from our program, and then we can put it inside this one file right here. Print. Okay. So rather than having the print instructions defined 3 times, we can put all of it into one file, which is a shared object file. And you can see here the instructions. Basically what this does is it makes your binary much more lighter, right? Because all of it has to be taken out and then put into a shared object file right here. And this is very different from a statically linked binary, because what a statically linked binary does is that if you have all of your functions like print, puts, all of these functions, everything will be put in your binary, which will result in a very heavy binary lah. So if you compare a statically linked binary, maybe it's going to be like 2 megabytes, while a statically linked binary can be like 2 kilobytes. Because this difference is because that the instructions, rather than put into your program, now it's put into a shared object program. Okay. So now, for the next thing that I would like to do when I do a binary challenge is that I want to check what security features are enabled on this binary. So you can do that with this checksec tool right here. We give it -- file, and we want to specify the file, which is our binary file right here, which is long. And you can see that there are some security protections enabled and disabled. But for the scope of this session, I'm not going to talk about how to defeat each protection, but I'll just give you a brief understanding of what each protection does. So first off, we have railroad, which what this does is it makes some parts of the binary, the permission, usually we have 3 permissions, right? We have read, write, and execute. But what this railroad does is that it makes some of the permissions to read and write, it will remove the write permission from the binary. Stack canary is a security feature that protects against buffer overflow. NX stands for no execute, which you will load the binary at different places, so you cannot brute force and guess where is the location of the function. NX is for non-execute, which makes the stack non-executable, and you cannot do things like shellcode. And pi is the one that I was mentioning just now, where the binary will be loaded into different places. But it's okay if you don't understand, because we're not going to be covering all of this right now. Before I proceed, I know, am I going too fast? Do you want me to slow down or anything? Alright. So then I'm going to start proceeding to teach you guys how to solve a binary challenge. Alright. So the first step, right? usually invited. Guys, can you please keep it down? Alright. So usually when you start a binary challenge, what you have to do is you have to do a little bit of reverse engineering. Now, the difference between reverse engineering and binary exploitation is that when you do reverse engineering, the point is you want to reverse engineer and find out what the program is doing. You want to understand how it works internally and what is the input and output. But for binary exploitation, usually when you reverse engineering, you have a goal of finding what is the vulnerability in the software. So to do this, I believe you guys have installed a tool called Hydra. So if you guys just open Hydra now, we're going to reverse engineer this program. Alright, so if you guys have gotten to this page already, you might notice that if you are using Hydra for the first time, it might look a bit different for you. So first what you need to do is you need to go to File and you need to create a new project. And inside this project, you need to select non-shared object. And then you can give it any name you want, and then you want to click on Finish to create this project. So I'll give you guys 1 minute to do this. If you guys are stuck anywhere, please let me know. I'll come and help you.
You project one. So did you get to know?
Alright, and did you guys manage to get to this screen right here yet, or do you guys need more time? Okay, just upload. Maybe I will give you guys a little more time to get to this part right here. If you want me to repeat this, raise your hand and let me know. Non-shared project.
You change the background.
I mean, story still cannot connect to each other. I don't know why.
Yes, Usam, you're raising your hand. Is there anything?
Can you see like the assignment is about the cybersecurity assignment? Have you downloaded it already?
Yeah, I will download everything. But the thing is, I will start everything.
You can type the questions.
I mean, have you downloaded like our cybersecurity assignment?
Oh, you mean the assignment?
Yeah, I want to see.
What's your Hydra? Opening Hydra for the first time. What you need to do is go to the file right here. Open a project, a new project, and you want to select non-shared project. Click next. Then in this project, you can right here, you can just give it any name that you want, and then you should click on Finish to create this new project. Right here, just click Finish. I'm not going to click Finish because I already have created the project, but if it's your first time, you want to create a new project. Right, so I assume everyone has been able to get to this page. So for this next step, what you want to do is you want to click on your file, and then you can click this import file. Or if you can also press I on your keyboard, and it should bring up, it should let you be able to import the file. Now what I want you to do is, when you're in this menu right here, you want to select the file that you got, this file.
You
And you want to import this file into Hydra.
I last time got
See here, all you need to do is just click OK, and you should import the file into Hydra already. You should see the file listed over here like this file.
So this one is the public key infrastructure, the security.
Which one?
If not here, then it's
Moodle,
yeah, it puts in.
Try Moodle.
Now, once you have successfully imported the file into Nidra, you want to double click on this the file right here. And it should open up another screen.
Because this one.
Now, once you have reached this screen right here, don't do anything first. We're going to go through one by one on what options you should be selecting. Alright, did everyone manage to reach over here yet? No. If you have not reached it, you can raise your hand and I'll come over and help you.
Yes, for the one that are already based off the
But we have to start doing the assignment already. Yeah, we have to start doing it. We have to solve the issue and then send it to him, I think.
It's May.
Yeah, it's me, but then you see the second task already came out. Second task. I think they'll keep going on task 3, task 4, task 5. I think I'm not sure. Task 2. Previously task 1 only. Then now task 2 come out already. But where is the this is a submission. Where is the download file? The several question can be found.
Alright, for those of you who did not manage to install Nidra, right, my friend has shared a link in the meetings chat, which is an online decompiler based on the web. So what you will do is you just upload your file in this .org, which is a decompiler. Yeah, and you guys can use Nidra to get the same view as what we are doing right now.
Yeah, you follow that one also cannot use it. You cannot follow one. Later I send to you the recording.
Oh, you got it.
Yeah. Later I send to you.
Now,
For
those of you who have reached this screen already, what you need to do is when it asks you, would you like to analyze it, you need to click on yes. And right over here, do not touch anything. All you need to do is just click analyze. We will just use the default settings from Nidra. Just click analyze. And give it a few seconds to decompile. Eventually, it should be success. And what you can do now is you can check different information about the binary. So for example, the imports, you can see what are the type of functions that has been imported into this file right from, like I mentioned just now, there is a shared object library, and you can see these are the functions that are being imported into the binary from the shared object library. Now, the thing that we are most interested in is you want to go to click over here the functions and the symbol tree. You want to click functions and you want to scroll down until you see main. Now, if you're familiar with C programming, usually all of our program will start from the main function. This is where we'll define the functions and this is where everything will run first. This is the first function that will be called when you run your program.
Assign date week 3, but real assign date week 6.
Now, every time you do a binary exploitation challenge, right? Whenever you see these two functions, which is set vbuff, when it's called on standard out and standard input, you can safely ignore this. This is just something that is run on the server side and you do not have to worry about this at all. Now, the next function we can see being called is this puts function right here. And what it's putting is putting a string, which is called please enter your string. And if we can just check this by just running the file on your terminal with a / and then the file name. You can see the output is also the same. Now, so far what we have explored the main function and we haven't seen anything too interesting yet. And we can see the next function is called found. So what we can do is we're going to click inside this function. Okay. Now this is something more interesting because we can notice the use of this function gets here. Now, if you're aware, usually gets is not a function that you want to use in software programming. Why? Is because this gets function, it will take input from the user, but the problem is it doesn't limit how much input you can give. So you can give too much input and it's going to crash the file. And you can see, for example, here, right, when we run this file, when we enter a few A's, you can see nothing happens because the program exits normally. But what happens is, if now we run the file again, but this time we give it a lot of input. As you can see here, we get this output segmentation fault. What this segmentation fault means is that the program crashed and it's trying to access a value at an invalid memory space, which we will explain more later. Now, we have identified the vulnerability, right? Because we have a buffer overflow. We can input any number of input that we want, and it's going to crash the program. Now, the others, this is not really that important. This is just for me to show you, right, that now there's a really important information that you need to know is that eventually when you do a buffer overflow, eventually you're going to override one very important thing. And this very important thing is called the return address. Now, this return address controls what is the next function called. So what if we could control this instruction and we can call any function we want. So what we can do is we can look for other functions and we can see that there's one interesting function on the side here which is called win. Now this win function, what it's going to do is going to open the flag file and then it's going to print it out and give it to you as a user. And usually in this style of challenges, right, this is your goal. Your goal is to call this win function. But how can we do that if you take a look in the main function and in the bound function, right? The win function is never called. So technically you can never get the flag. But that's not true because now we're going to use a technique called buffer overflow to be able to call a function that we want. Okay. Now, to be able to identify how much buffer overflow we need to give before we reach the return address, there are two ways to do this. Now, the first and easy way is that we can just go to Ghidra. Okay, before that, we can just rename this function. You can just right click on this function right here. And since we know it's taking user input, right, we can just call this variable as user input. Okay, so that we know what this variable is being used for. And the easiest way for you to find the return address is if you look at this screen right here, this screen, the decompilation, you can see that this is the return address right here. And this is the location of our user input. Now, the important value you need to know is that this value right here is 0x38. Now, this value represents the distance from your input until you reach this return address. And this is how much you want to buffer overflow before you reach the return address, and you can modify this value to call any function that you want. Now, this is the first way you can do it. And another way you can do this is more complicated, but if you manage to do this, I think your understanding of binary exploitation will be better. So for the second one, this is another method. And what I like to do is you can just right click on your terminal, you can put this split screen vertically so that you can have two terminals running at once. And on the right side, we're going to activate Python, and you should get like something like this output. And on the second this screen right here, you're going to want to open GDB, and you want to pass in the file as an argument, like this GDB and then the bound file. Now, to find the return address, what we need to do is we need to set a breakpoint at the return instruction. Now, if you see here, right, in Ghidra, there are two different outputs that you are shown. On this right side here, This is called a decompilation. A decompilation is basically like pseudocode. The keyjoy is going to generate what it thinks the program is doing based on the assembly language. This is pseudocode. This is not an accurate representation of what the source code is, but it is good. It mimics the functionality of what the source code is doing. And on the left side here, you can see these are the assembly instructions of the program. Assembly instruction is what instruction that is being actually executed by a computer. Because you know that high-level programming languages can't be executed on your computer, right? Because you need to compile them into computer instructions. Computer only understands 0 and 1, which is why you need to compile them into assembly instructions. And if you take a look at the left here, these are the assembly instructions, like this push RBP, move RBP, RSP, all of this. Okay, I'm not going to go through the assembly instruction. I think it will take too long. But just know that these are the computer instructions. So what we want to do is, we want to be setting a breakpoint at this return address right here. That is what we're looking for. Now, back to GDB. What you want to do is type this command right here, this as, or which is short for disassemble, and you want to give it the name of the function, right, like this as, and then long. And when I hit enter, you should be able to see an output like this. Now, this is the disassemble view of the program. If you compare it to keyjar, right, it's basically the same thing. You have this push RBP, move RBP, RSP, and at the end, leave return. If you compare it to the GDB, it's the same thing because these are the computer assembly instructions. Now, so far, did anyone manage to follow it? Am I going too fast? Please let me know. Alright, so if you didn't manage to install keyjar, right, you can still follow along with this because this is a different tool. All you need to do is start GDB and pass in the file name just like this only. Okay? And next, what you want to do is disassemble and then give it the vulnerable function.
Expected length 5,000 words. So it's not including.
Maybe I'll give you guys 1 more minute to be able to do this.
Wait, what you need to use include the word count at the end of the word. What does this mean? You have to write down the word count at the bottom. Ah. So not only here, but at the bottom also have to write down the word count.
I think this is only including the content. This one is include the whole thing.
Yeah.
Content only. Or the content is 5,000.
Alright, so if you have reached this stage right here,
That's
the next thing I want you to do is press B, or B is a short form for break. Type the full command break like this. Now, what this break command does is that you are setting a breakpoint. What a breakpoint basically does is that it is going to tell the program to stop executing right at this breakpoint. So what we're going to do is we're going to set breakpoint. We're going to say we want to set breakpoint at false. It's very important to add this asterisk right here. Put the star symbol and then the name of the function. And after you put the name of the function, since we want to put the breakpoint not at the vulnerable function, but we want to put it at the return address right here, which is located here. It's not up here, it's located down here. So what you need to do now is you need to reference this number right here, plus 52. This is the offset of where you are supposed to put the breakpoint. So now you need to put plus 52 just like this.
If let's say you are even
I will copy this command and put it in the Teams chat so that you guys can follow.
infected PC, right? What type of tools would you
You want to
recommend?
set a breakpoint at the vulnerable function
Since they all are
and
very
offset.
professional, right? I mean, technically they are very high level compared to us. You should ask them what type of forensic tools that they usually use for
I
infected
got a
PC.
question asking
That way we
me
can
what
get
is offset 52. So basically all of your instructions, right, you have different offset. So this basically is where your instruction starts, which is the first instruction. Then the next one is over here.
So there's subsection
one instruction away, right? This one is like 4 bytes away. This one is 8 bytes away. And this one is 12 bytes away. So because each instruction is have different size, right? 1 byte, 2 byte, 3 byte, 4 byte. So which means that you need to go over 2 bytes to reach this return address right here.
Nice scanning and justify the use. So we can ask these people, right? We ask them about all these tattoos that we can use. You know what I mean?
Okay, there's another question which
Because they have experience, they should know.
what is this assemble signal function about? Now, this
But maybe like
S
after
means
this
that
workshop,
it's going to
Yeah,
disassemble the program. And disassemble means that you are generating this assembly code from machine code. So basically, right, if we take a look, before this, right, we only have this file right here, which is the bound file. And if we take a look at what the file is, if you take a look at what is the file, all we can see is a bunch of bytes, right? We don't understand what is this. This is a bunch of bytes that only the computer understands. We as a human, we cannot understand this because this is in machine language. So what this S function does is that it's going to disassemble and it's going to print out more human readable version of what the program is doing. Now, the assembly language is different from your normal C programming language, right? Because C programming is like a high level, like something like Python. It's like a high level programming language. The syntax is very close to human language, but assembly is a low level one. A low level means that it is something that a computer can understand because push RBP means that the assembly instruction is going to push whatever value is in this register right here. Now, all of these things that you see right here, RBP, RSP, these are all registers in the program. So basically what it does is that it generates the assembly code based on the file that you give. Now, moving on to the next section where we are still trying to find the offset in the second way, right? So Python has this very, Pontools has a very helpful tool you can do this. First, what you want to do in the Python tree is you want to specify from Pontools, you want to import everything. Just type this command right here, from pont import everything. Alright, sorry about that. My team is apparently someone muted here. Okay, so what I was saying is that on this next step, we are still trying to find the offset of the return address manually where the program crashes. So first you need to type this line from pont import all, and the next thing you want to do is type this cyclic 100, and it's going to give you a pattern just like this which you can use to find the offset. Okay. Now what you want to do is copy this. You can do this. Okay. If you are familiar with Windows, you will know that copying is Ctrl+C, right? But in Linux it's different. You need to press Ctrl+Shift+C, or you can also right click and select copy. Yes. What I told you to do is what to copy this long string right here, right? Okay. Next thing you need to do is go back to your GDB, press R. R means can stand for run, but short form you can do is just press R. So if you press R, it's going to start your binary, and the same thing you're going to see over here. Please enter your string, which means that the program is running right now. Okay. Now what you want to do is Control Shift E to paste your input, or you can just right click and click paste, and then you press enter. Now this is the most important part, right? You can see that right now we are at the point where the program crashes. And since we're at the point where the program crashes, what we need to inspect what is the value
I need to clean up the files that's allowed to be kept from.
You can do this by pressing this command right here, x slash
What
x.
happened to your Gmail?
What x means is that you want to examine slash s means that you want to examine
Okay, what happened to your
x
Gmail?
slash s. Now we want to x slash s to examine a string, and we want to give it the argument rst, which is the stack pointer. You need to inspect what is the value of the stack pointer right now. When you press enter, you can see that this over here
With the
is
free
point
one
where
is
our
like 60
program
GB,
crashed, right? Now what you want to do is copy this value, go back to your point,
No,
do this, cyclic
I also still got
find,
plenty. I got like around 8 GB left, I think.
and just
A
input it
lot
like
of my
this,
files
the
I
function
just transfer it to
cyclic find,
a
and you can see that
drive.
it should return you with the value 56.
Delete lah, highlight lah. Yeah, I cannot recover one. You have to bring your whole laptop go to service.
Okay, so to verify this, right? This value,
Oh, shit.
you can go back to Kidra. We can see that our user input. Remember, I told you just now the offset is this hex value right here, 0x38, right? Actually, what is 0x38 in hexadecimal? When we convert this to binary,
What the heck? Not sure.
we can see that the value 38 in hex is the same as 56.
Damn, bro.
When you work with reverse engineering tools, usually a lot of things will be represented in base 60, which is hexadecimal. Okay, now that we found the offset, which is 56, it's time that we can start to exploit it. Right now, I will show you two ways that you can find the offset of the binary. Now, I want you all of you to remember the value 56. This is the value that we're going to be using to exploit the program. Now, for this next part, right, I'm going to teach you guys how to develop your exploit with the Font Tools library, which is a framework for developing exploits, especially by exploitation. It makes your life much more easier. So what you want to do now is you want to create a Python file. Okay, one thing I want to highlight is that some of you may not have a text editor like Sublime Text. Maybe you have Nano. So what you will need to do is type this Nano to exploit is not high. And it should bring you to a text editor like this. But for those of you who have something like subline text, all you can do like this, subline exploit.
Yeah, so our tool for Microsoft Defender is
This text editor right here.
That one is to prevent.
This is actually funny, yeah.
I would recommend downloading subline text because it's much more user friendly and easier to use, right? If you are using Nano right now, you'll notice that it can be moved around using arrow keys and it's
very similar.
It's helping hard to
Very sure.
To start writing an exploit, first thing we need to do is we need to specify that we are using the Python interpreter, just like this. We need to put this line right here. This is called a shebang in a script. This hashtag and exclamation mark, this is called a shebang. You are specifying the script using this Python interpreter. Next thing we want to do is we want to create a variable. So for this variable, exe, we're going to assign this exe to an elf class, which is the file that we had. And we're going to pass in the argument file just like this. We are passing in the file into a class and it's going to automatically extract information about the binary. And this information is going to be stored in the exe variable. Next thing we want to do is over here. Let's say we want to run the binary from the script, right? What we can do is say that we're going to assign another variable p is equal to exe.process, just like this.
I don't know if you can find it.
Now, if we run this file like this, to run a Python file, you need to specify Python, and then you have to specify the Python script.
I don't know if now can do the same thing.
Sorry, before that, first thing we need to do also, like just now, we need to do
I got too many already, right? I delete some already. But you're still learning at there? Okay, it's good. Keep learning. Need to learn. Are you unplug and plug back? What is it?
Okay. Now we can try to run it again. You can see that nothing is put out right. We don't know what's going on. So the next thing we need to do is at the end right here, we have to say p.directive. And if we try to run this time, you can see the output that is similar as what we saw earlier.
Publish it, what do you mean? Publish this one. I'm also not sure.
Now,
I never do this before also.
remember from earlier that we have a buffer overflow, right? And to reach our offset,
They're very easy only. Publish website very easy only. We have our own publish website.
Assign offset to 56 to the variable.
Own domain link. Host. They're very easy only hosting. But I mean this one I don't know lah. This one they're creating like challenges. That one you have to learn cybersecurity in order to do that. I'm not sure how.
Variable. Now, remember
But
we
then
need
you see how you
to
press inside, right?
56 bytes of data, correct?
You see this
So
one,
what
right?
we're going to do is we're going to say, specify this payload to be the character A,
Copy it.
and we want to multiply it with the offset.
Or let's say you make
And next thing is that now that we have control of where the program is going, we need to specify our location. How do we find this location? There are two ways one to
no
get.
S on it. No S on it.
First off,
That means they do it
you can go
themselves.
into Hydra,
They probably do it within like
and you want to go to
Microsoft
this
actual
green function right here.
hosting
Click
that
on
will
the
have
function.
HTTP, not HTTPS.
And what you need to pay attention to is this
Like for
first
me, when I
address
want to post my website,
that
right, I just post it versus
the one
like netly file.
this is 401186. Now this is the location where you want to go to, right? Because this is your function. This is what is going to give us the flag on the server. So you want to copy this value.
Platform help you to host on free, no need to pay money. They have a lot of
And we
features
can say that
they come not in.
after our payload of 56 bytes, we want to plus the value
Basically, you guys
zero x
capture
x value like this.
Yeah. You host it, then everybody
But
also
now
can use it.
remember, right, we are doing this on the 64-bit program, which means that we need to mainline everything into 8 bytes.
Have domain, yeah.
So
Have
if
domain
you see,
something,
right,
and then at the back
four
of
bytes.
dot .NET
Because 2
5
hex value is 1 byte, correct?
That's how we host
1
it.
byte is 8 bits. And 1 byte means they're represented in 2 hex values because each hex value is 4
The same thing
bits.
when you do things
Which
here.
means that
There
over
also
here,
got reflect.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
The link is because
This
the link
is only
hosts
4
already,
bytes
right?
because it's
Unless you
8 hex
update the
values.
file, then the
So
link
what we
will
need to
refresh
do
into
is
the
we
new
need
one.
to specify just like this.
I mean the database thing. Like if you
You need to
create
add another 8
then
zeros.
your side can log in the account created from here. Okay.
Like this, and then we should be able to get the
I
flag.
create my for my laptop, and then for his one, he also can use the database and stuff.
If you run this,
Is that what you're asking? Yeah, okay.
Oh no.
This is, everything's on cloud one. There's nothing to be.
No need to use more.
okay, since this is a byte string, we have to do it in a different way. We have to do it like this. We need to specify it as bytes.
Actually, you tried before like this. Bro, I tried many times already. What do you mean I tried before? I tried like freaking hundreds of times. No, not hundreds of times. Maybe around like 15, 16 times probably. I don't know. Around there. But I know I tried many times already.
Next
You
year.
need to
That's
specify
why
it
I'm
as a
confident.
byte string
If
just like
not, I'm
this.
not confident.
So
But I'm
rather than
confident
this
here,
now
so
is an
I say
integer
this.
value.
But I know from beginner level to go up here is very difficult.
So we need
Because
to
it
convert
took
it
me
to
6
byte
months
string by
to
putting
come
this
here.
value in.
It took me 6 months to know learn to this level.
Now bytes like here.
So that's why if you guys like from now starting to go very difficult.
Now remember our
Plus,
address
must
is
understand that the 6 months
40186. So we're gonna put it like
including
this,
when I was in
40.
Chinese New Year time, because in Chinese I never go back. Alright, I was still learning. Including Chinese New Year time, I spent about 10 hours every single day. 10
Now
hours
if we
per
run
day.
this, we should get the flag.
But minimum also 8
So
hours.
we need to send this payload to the
My
binary.
most minimum.
So I'm going to teach you a way that you can interact with the binary.
And then at one point, I hit 100 hour weekend.
Now what is
show
this
you.
doing is basically
I took a
simulating
picture.
user interface. It's going to send a line to the binary. And what we want to send is we want to specify payload. This is our input that we want to send to the program. Now if you run this, you can see it still fails because we are still missing something. Now I'm going to teach you guys how you can debug your exploit and you can see what is going on inside the program by using GDB. Now if you really want to go into reverse engineering and primary exploitation,
Almost 100
one
hours
of
in
the
one
most
week.
important things you need
That's
to
how much I
know
had to
is
freaking study on this shit. The time I was still
now,
doing the
this next part,
RWD
just
assignment.
add this line right here.
Yeah, it was not easy. It was damn tough. I spent 10 hours every day almost.
GDB dot
Crazy. So as I say, if you want to learn this, right, you take a lot of time to learn it. It's not so easy. I try to find all the crash course. Crash course like they teach you all the stuff that's needed only. I learn also no use. I still have to learn the full thing because if I want to fully understand.
equal to
So it takes a long time to do all this.
this value right here. We're going to set the breakpoint at 2 plus 52 just like just now.
This semester also about to hit
And
another
one
100 hour week.
GDB script is equal
100
to
hour week. That means like 14 hours a day. Crazy, bro.
now I'll copy
14
this
hours
and
a
paste
day.
this in the zip
One day no sleep.
so that you guys can follow along.
100 hours a week. But not good for the health, I tell you. That
And
time
now,
I
if you run this again, you can see that it's going to attach us
my veins, nerve got issue. My ankle, my wrist, and my neck pain. I move little bit pain, move little bit pain, move little bit pain, move pain. My leg cannot move. So that's why I say it's not healthy. You know that time one of my friends
now if you run
for
this,
8
it's going
hours
to
no
attach
sleep.
us to the GDB process.
And then on the third day, he again went to like
Now you can see
late
here,
sleep.
right?
You know, he go to hospital, hackathon.
Now we have reached our
And then he
breakpoint
won
right
for the
here.
hackathon.
And
He
now
won 3,000. But he
the
go to
value
hospital,
that is RSP
3,000.
right here, right? This is the value
What's the
one
point of
control.
winning the hackathon then?
But if you see here, this value is not really what we are expecting, right? We are expecting it to be 0000401186. But what happened? You can see that this value is now 861140. Now, this is an important thing you need to know when you're doing binary exploitation is that there's a feature called least significant byte. Now, what this least significant byte does is that it means that everything you do is going to be in reverse order. So maybe you expect 401186 will be from the left to right, but it's wrong. It's going to go from right to left. Which is why 401186 has become 861140 right over here.
That's what happened to
Now, we need to reverse this,
at the bottom.
and what we can do is, you can manually do it like this.
I tried to call once.
Can do 86,
I 24 3 times already. Every time also because of hackathon and all this kind of shit.
Now, this is a valid method which
3 times already I got it. That's why I see my eyes it's permanent already, forever here already. I can't remove it. Got. Yeah. Oh.
You can see now this value is correct, right?
Already. It's like forever
Now
here.
it's 401186.
I have chronicle damage
And
already.
you can see after
Cannot
the
heal
returns,
already.
the next instruction that is going to call is our wait function.
I don't ever want to sleep. I don't ever
Now,
want to do this
rather than
ever.
doing this
24 hours.
manually,
I cannot do
luckily
ever.
there is something in Contours that will
scared
help
of my
us
life-
automatically
I scared of my
do this
lifespan
and
is
make
up.
our life easier.
I'm scared of my lifespan.
This function is called FSeC-SS. And every time you want to add a value into memory, you need to use this FSeC-SS value. What it will does is basically what we did earlier. It's just going to reverse the value. Now, we're going to, for the argument, we're just going to put it in. Same thing as what we saw, which is the address of wait function. The only difference this time is we are using the FSeC-SS function right here. Now we can try to run this again. You can see it's the same output this time. Now this is correct.
Assumption thing, the due date is like 8 a.m.
Now that we know our exploit is working, rather than debugging it right now, we just want to run it. Let me share the script in the Teams. Right. So now that we know it's working, we can just run this script like this. And you can see that we get this error message because when we download the file, there is no flag.txt. So when we are doing this locally, we need to manually input a fake flag. This is just to test this locally and make sure that you are able to get the flag. Now, if we run the same Python script again, you can see that we managed to get the flag. Because we called the wait function and then it exited. Now, what you guys can do is that in a real CTF environment, what we want to do is we want to run it on the exploit server. We want to exploit the remote server, which will give us the actual flag that we can submit to the CTF platform. And how we can do this is, you need to go to your CTF platform, right? Go to the challenge right here, this challenge right here. And you need to get the IP address and the port number right here. Okay, so just copy this. And now, instead of I want to create a local process, which is only running on my computer, now I want to say P equals to T remote. Now I need to make a remote connection to the CTF server. We need to give this a host and a port as an argument. What we can do is we say host is equal to this IP address, and the port will specify port 5000, just like this. Now, if we run this, so you can see that it's going to fail again. Now, very often, right, when you run this, if you join any CTF, online CTF or any kind of CTF, right, maybe your exploit works locally already, and you are sure that you didn't make any mistakes. There's only one thing that could make your thing fail, which is now, right, what you need to do is, you need to, you can go to your Hydra, just look for any return instruction. You see this address of the return, you can just copy this address right here. And you can just save it somewhere. Okay, we will add it right before our function. Just like this. Now, I'll add a comment right here. Now, this value right here is our return instruction. And the second one right here is our win function. Now, why we need to have this return instruction right before we call our function is that usually on the Ubuntu server, which is the one that we will run on the remote server, our CTF server, instructions need to be aligned in 16 bytes. So if you can see here, right, our win function this is only 8 bytes. So we need to align this with 2 instructions, which is 16 bytes. And why we specifically choose this return instruction is that basically it does nothing. Because we don't want the instruction to ruin anything we've done. So we just use return, which basically does nothing. Another way which I did not ask you guys to install the tool is you can use rock gadget like this. You can save binary and then long, and then you can grab for return address. And this is also a valid way. This is my preferred way of getting rock gadgets. You can just select the gadget like this. But for the sake of this, you can just look for any return gadget in Vidra, and you can just put it in like this. Now this time, if you run the export script, you can see how you manage to get a flag. Alright, so now I'll give you guys a few minutes. You can just copy this script. You can just get the flag from remote server and you can serve it to the CTF platform. Alright. So far, up until this point, do you guys have any question, like you're confused, like why we do this, or anything you want to ask, you can ask right now and I'll try my best to explain it.
No, I'm not going home. But I mean, I'm going to a hacker house. SS-15. This place over here, I'll show you right now.
Alright, there's a question why we need to put return address before the win. Now, okay.
You want to go? Cannot lah. You're not allowed. Because I go in with my team members, so you do not allow. Sorry, bro.
Basically, it's not going to give you the flag. So
no, you literally not allowed. You need to have a pass.
Return first rather than the win.
What the hell? Where is the place already? I don't know. Then over here, okay.
Okay, very good. What is it?
Where is it? Oh, here. Yeah.
Second.
I don't know. Actually,
Hacker house free.
No, hacker house is free, but you need to have a pass. It's like a sort of like a company or something like that, but it's not a company, it's an organization. Yeah. You have to like join. I don't know. Basically, you have to like join the last time hackathon. Then you need to enter. If you don't have the pass, they don't allow you to enter. So see how.
Then I think we can just wrap up this workshop. But please do not leave us. We want to take a quick photo session with all of you together. So yeah. So first, I would just want to say thank you to everyone who joined our CTF Cred workshop. And what the college So as I was saying, the knowledge that you learn here is not only applicable to ICTF, but in the future, if you want to join any CTF, all of these knowledge, these are actually what